La Silla Observatory, Chile, 2009. Astronomers identify a potentially habitable planet orbiting the star Gliese 667c. It's a large Earth-like planet located firmly in the Goldilocks zone. While evidence of life has yet to be discovered, scientists are able to speculate as to how life on this planet would evolve.
When we imagine life on other planets, we have to imagine that the environment on those planets will determine what the creature may look like.
In considering planets larger than Earth, the increased gravity will likely result in shorter, complex life forms. This results in a more stable life form and protects against falls. So life forms on larger planets would likely be smaller than those on smaller planets.
Like Earth, a major evolutionary force on the planet is the strength of its sun.
Gliese 667c is a red dwarf star, an M star, that's about 1.4% as bright as our sun. Because M dwarf stars are much smaller than our sun, they're much cooler and they give off a lot less light. Because the star gives out such low light compared to our sun, any life on those planets would look much different.
Let's assume for the sake of argument that there is life on Gliese 667c. Such life would be living in kind of eternal darkness. In order for life forms on a planet like that to see, they'd be like owls on planet Earth. They would have very, very large eyes to capture as much light as possible.
They are going to develop eyes that are perhaps more like insects' eyes, where you're seeing different light spectrums and heat signatures. Something completely different than the way we see.
For ancient astronaut theorists, these descriptions share a curious similarity to accounts reported by alleged alien abductees.
Alien abductees give very consistent accounts of some of the types of aliens they see. The most consistent account is 4 feet, short, gray, big-headed, big-eyed aliens. And this would fit what we might expect with gravity so intense that you couldn't grow to 6 feet.
Short, gray aliens with large black eyes? Is it possible that the habitable planet orbiting Gliese 667c is the homeworld of the beings known in the UFO community as the Greys? As far as ancient astronaut theorists are concerned, the planet orbiting Gliese 667c is just one of a number of recently discovered worlds that could represent places of origin for extraterrestrials encountered both in modern times and in the distant past. The Cydonia region of Mars, July 20th, 1976. An alien spacecraft sent from Earth touches down on the red planet.
Nav is green for touchdown.
After a 10-month journey, Viking 1 has reached its destination.
Touchdown, we have touchdown.
To NASA scientists, it's a momentous event. For the first time in its history, the United States has a probe on another planet.
Viking was the first spacecraft to actually attempt a soft landing on Mars and give us an actual feel, a taste for what the conditions were on the surface. We looked out at those pictures of the surface, and they looked so much like the Pacific deserts here, like Death Valley. We all half expected to see a miner in his burrow come walking up over the nearest rise.
Scientists knew that finding definitive signs of life on Mars was a long shot. But when the Viking lander performed 4 tests on the Martian soil, looking for microbial life, it returned surprising and controversial results. Dr. Gil Levin designed one of the tests that the Viking probe performed.
Microorganisms breathe, just like you or I or anything else, and then they give off carbon dioxide. So we got a tiny sample, a thimbleful of the soil, put into a little container. It was monitored for 7 days continuously to see if there are any bubbles forming in the tube. Surprisingly, the test came up positive for life by the criteria that had been approved by NASA.
However, the result of another important test, one looking for organic matter on the Martian surface, was negative. But Dr. Levin says the other test wasn't nearly as sensitive as his experiment. It needed 3 million bacteria in a thimble full of Martian soil to find signs of life, while Dr. Levin's test only required 30 bacteria.
So there was a vast discrepancy in the sensitivity of the two experiments. And I immediately said, well, you know, they both could be right. We detected life, but maybe there aren't enough bacteria per unit of soil for the organic analysis instrument to find. But NASA was very cautious, and they opted to say, no organic matter, there goes the ball game, no life.
Geneva, Switzerland, October 8th, 2019. Astronomers Michel Mayor and Didier Queloz are awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for discovering the first exoplanet in 1992. In the years since, more than 4,000 have been examined and categorized, and more are being found every day.
Let's do a science experiment tonight. Go outside, look up, and see all the thousands of stars you see. Every single one, on average, has a planet going around them. And about a 1 in 20 has an Earth-like planet. And so when you look at the stars tonight, realize that somebody could be looking back at you from outer space.
In 2021, NASA will launch the James Webb Space Telescope, a satellite that can do something once thought impossible: take detailed color images of an exoplanet.
The James Webb Space Telescope is a different type of telescope than we've had in space before. It will give us the ability to look at the reflected light from exoplanets in the infrared part of the spectrum and to search for the potential for biology being present.
But when we look upon the images of other worlds, and possibly even the beings that inhabit them, what will we find?
I think that what's really lying in store for humanity now is that we will prove that there are these exoplanets out there, that they have life, and quite possibly intelligent life capable of coming to our solar system. This will cause a sea change all over the world, within scientific communities and within the religious communities too.
If astronomers discover exoplanets with intelligent alien life forms, will they appear eerily familiar? Could they find amphibious humanoid beings, like the gods depicted in ancient times? Small gray aliens, like those reported by alleged abductees? And is it possible that some visitors, perhaps coming from worlds very similar to Earth, might look remarkably like us?
Within established ancient astronaut theory, it's generally thought that these extraterrestrial beings coming from outside of our solar system were interacting with our society, and they were manipulating our DNA and, in a sense, creating people on this planet, us, who look like them and are similar to them.
As we discover more and more exoplanets, the implications for humanity are enormous. I think it's very possible that we're on the verge of discovering our home planet, the place of our origins.
The big revelation will not be, do they look like us, but we look like them, because we are their offspring.
Cape Canaveral, Florida, August 20th, 1975.
Ignition, we have liftoff.
The United States launches a Titan rocket carrying the Viking spacecraft. Viking is embarking on a 420 million mile journey to one of the most prominent sights in the night sky, Mars. If all goes well, in 11 months, the unmanned probe will touch down on the Martian surface and search for evidence of life. Mainstream scientists say Mars is most likely a dead planet because of its incredible temperature swings and high levels of solar radiation. So why is NASA spending $1 billion to explore it?
The night sky is an astounding thing. To the naked eye, the red planet could be seen with its special colors. After all, it's the biggest thing you see up there past the moon. So it's been a special object of fascination and reverence because religious systems often were associated with the planets and the stars, the sky in general. Speculations about what's there, is intelligent life there, or the gods there, that's gone on for a long time.
Our dream for life on Mars probably goes back even to the ancient times when we were just doing naked eye observation. It's the planet that really stands out, that we now know is very close to Earth in terms of physical conditions. Even though Venus is much more like Earth in size and gravity, it's a hellhole in the solar system. But Mars is out there within our grasp.
Among the first to record this fiery red ball in the night sky were ancient Egyptian astronomers. In 1534 BC, they placed Mars on humanity's first chart of the known cosmos, the Cenobite star map. 2.5 centuries later, the Egyptians painted the planet Mars on the ceiling of the tomb of Seti I. But while the Egyptians honored Mars, many other ancient cultures feared it because they associated the red planet with death, destruction, and war. According to some anthropologists, this is because the planet glows red, like the color of blood, spilled on the battlefield.
The association of the red planet with the gods of war goes way back. In ancient Babylon, Mars was named after Nergal, the god of fire, death, and destruction, essentially a god of war. The Greeks named Mars after Ares, their god of war. The Romans, Mars, that is their god of war. Rome was a warrior culture. So this martial emphasis, all connected to the red planet, is accounting for the great armies that conquered the known world, a very successful story, and very much aligned with the planet Mars.
Saqqara, Egypt, 1850. While on an expedition to recover ancient manuscripts for the Louvre Museum in Paris, French Egyptologist Auguste Mariette spots a strange object sticking out of the sand. Intrigued, Mariette has the sand cleared away and finds large rocks blocking what looks to be the entrance to an underground chamber. After using explosives to remove them, he gains entrance to a tomb complex, also known as the Serapium. In April 2018, ancient astronaut theorist Georgios Tsoukalos and Egyptologist and Cairo native Rami Rahmani visited this mysterious site.
The Serapium of Saqqara, Georgia. Magnificent. The name Serapium comes from Serapis, which is Apis bull and Osiris combined together in one Greek god.
Located deep beneath the desert surface lies a 790-foot-long passageway. There, within a series of alcoves, neatly carved out of the limestone rock, are 24 gigantic stone sarcophagi. Each sarcophagus measures approximately 13 feet long 7.5 feet wide and over 10 feet tall. But just how the ancient Egyptians managed to transport these massive granite boxes remains unknown, as does their intended purpose.
So this is one of the most mysterious places in all of Egypt, Giorgio.
Look how far all this goes. The boxes themselves are, what, 70 to 75 tons? And then the lids are estimated to be 20 to 25 tons.
It's one of the most mysterious things about this place is really how they managed to bring these heavy structures all the way down here when we're breathing heavily just to get to the end.
Can we actually go down to some of these?
Of course we can.
Wow. You know, I've always read about these, I've seen pictures, but it's humongous. You can walk underneath it.
As far as conventional Egyptologists and archaeologists are concerned, the sarcophagi were meant to house the remains of the sacred Apis bulls. But as only one of the tombs was found to contain animal remains and all the others were found empty, the true nature of the Serapium is a source of deep contention.
The Apis bull is a representation for god Osiris. And there's something very important to mention. Ancient Egyptians did not worship animals. Their concept was the gods sent the animals to be their messengers, and we have to respect them in that way.
It was said that the first ever Apis bowl was created when a ray of light came down from heaven itself and struck this cow who produced the first Apis bull. So there is some relationship between the bull itself and the stars.
The sides and also here at the bottom, the polishing is perfect. And we can illustrate this by just looking at the angle. I mean, it's a perfect 90-degree angle. Check this out. It is absolute perfection. It's easy to cut limestone, but to cut basalt is, that's a different story. What do these inscriptions here say?
These inscriptions were extremely important. You see the doors, specifically the so-called false doors. They were the doors that allowed the spirit, the Ka and the Pa, the spirit and the soul, to come out from the mummy and then read the hieroglyphic inscriptions. They wanted to make sure that these Apis bulls come back to life, go to eternity, so they could stay with Osiris in the sky.
Egypt, 1850. While excavating the underground structure at Saqqara, Egyptologist Auguste Mariette discovers a stela that identifies the complex as the Serapium.
The Serapium gets its name from Serapis, which was a Greek god that was a combination between an ancient Egyptian bull, Apis, and a Greek god at the time. The combination between both was Serapis, and the Serapium was the place where you go pray for that specific god.
The cult of the Apis bull, which later becomes known as Serapis, dates back to the very first dynasty. The very early kings of Egypt worshipped these particular bulls.
The Apis bull cult was extremely popular in Egypt all the way back 5,000 years ago. One of the first kings of ancient Egypt, the first dynasty, King Menes, who unified North Egypt and South Egypt together, would represent himself as a bull.
King Menes is documented as the first human pharaoh and is believed to have ruled around 3200 BC. According to their written history, before the reign of Menes, Egypt was ruled by the gods, who lived among humans on Earth. When the gods left, Menes inherited the throne from the god king Horus.
The ancient Egyptians believed that Horus was actually a god-man. He was a being of flesh and blood. The ancient Egyptians were in contact with the gods. physical manifestations, extraterrestrial beings who came and lived with them.
At the end of Horus's reign, the Egyptians wrote that the gods no longer lived among humans, but still held influence over earthly events. One point of connection between the gods and the mortal world was the Apis Bowl.
In many ways, the Apis Bowl was seen to be a personification of that contact between this world and the star world. So is it possible that the Serapium is associated with the Apis Bowls because there is some kind of connection with a celestial intelligence and what these underground structures really represent?
Could it be that the Serapium of Saqqara was built more than 5,000 years ago and has a connection to otherworldly visitors? Ancient astronaut theorists suggest clues can be found by examining the size of these boxes.
When you think of a sarcophagus, you don't think of something so large as what's in the Serapium. They're about 10 feet high and almost 20 feet long. And it's way too large for these Apis bulls.
In traditional Egyptian sarcophagi building, they would create the sarcophagus so that it very closely matched the dimensions of the body inside it in order to preserve it. These boxes are many times too large for even an Apis bull. So this is pointing to the idea that something else was concealed within these boxes.
Some ancient astronaut theorists believe an important clue as to what the giant stone boxes may have held can be found at a site 400 miles to the south. Armant, Egypt, 1929. British archaeologist Sir Robert Mond begins an excavation of an ancient catacomb called the Bukium and makes an extraordinary discovery.
There is a place called the Bukium where they found similar type sarcophagi to the Serapium, and it was at the Bukium where they found remains mummified in the shape of a bull. And they thought, finally, we found the remains of a mummified Apis bull. And they opened up the mummified remains, and they were confronted with this stinking mass of bitumen, which is asphalt, in which they found tiny, tiny fragments of bones. Now, it was anathema in ancient Egypt to destroy any dead bodies. You had to mummify them, and you had to mummify them intact.
All Egyptians, they mummified everything. They mummified not only humans, they mummified birds, they mummified apes, they mummified dogs. Why do they mummify every animal? Because you can only be reincarnated when your body is conserved.
The Serapium is one of the most inexplicable places on planet Earth. Forget Egypt. I am referring to the entire planet because there is no other place that is similar to the Serapium.
The Serapium is a vast underground complex at Saqqara in Egypt, just to the south of the Giza pyramid field. And within it are around 20 huge chambers filled with these enormous sized granite sarcophagi.
They are incredibly heavy. The bottom parts are estimated to weigh between 70 to 75 metric tons. The lids are estimated to weigh between 20 and 25 metric tons, which is a combined weight of 100 tons. And the workmanship with which these sarcophagi have been created is absolute perfection. The surfaces are polished, the corners are sharp. It's a giant mystery what happened there.
The Greek writer Herodotus, on his visit to Egypt around 450 BC, suggests that these massive sarcophagi were built to contain the remains of the Apis ball after each one died.
The Serapium was given its name by the French explorer Mariette, who called the Serapium the place of Serapis. Serapis was a Greek god that was the mixture of two ancient Egyptian figures, god Osiris, the god of good, and Apis the bull that represented god Osiris.
The remains that were found inside these giant boxes were crushed up bones from different animals. Now, right there, we have a huge problem, because in ancient Egyptian religion, it was against the law to break up any mummies. They had to be mummified in perfect condition. So in my opinion, whatever was buried there, the ancient Egyptians never wanted those creatures to have an afterlife, or that these creatures would never be resurrected. So could it be that the Apis bull was some type of a genetically amplified monstrosity created by the gods?
Saqqara. Situated on the west bank of the Nile River, 20 miles south of Cairo, this archaeological site is one of the oldest and largest burial grounds in all of Egypt.
Egyptologists called these monuments tombs, but to the Egyptians they were not tombs. They were gateways to the afterworld. It is through these structures that the king will begin a journey into the underworld in order to face obstacles, dangers, and threats. And if he would overcome these threats, he would be given passage into the afterlife kingdom of Osiris.
Overlooking the immense necropolis lies the pyramid of King Teti, the first ruler of Egypt's 6th dynasty. Teti built his pyramid and an adjoining mortuary temple during his reign more than 4,000 years ago.
I'm walking on what's left of the ancient causeway of King Teti I. That's his pyramid. And here is his very much ruined mortuary temple. Now, this pyramid is very important. It contains the oldest religious writing in the world, the pyramid texts.
According to archaeologists, the pyramid texts are a collection of ancient Egyptian religious writings that date back to 2400 BC. They contain passages about Osiris, the Egyptian god of the afterlife, and descriptions of how to prepare the pharaoh's remains during his ascent to the heavens after death.
The pyramid texts are all about the stars. It's all about the king becoming a star. It's all about the king ascending to the sky and joining Osiris, Orion in the sky.
But according to ancient astronaut theorists, the pyramid texts didn't only guide the pharaoh to an afterlife. They actually provided instruction on how the pharaoh could travel to other worlds.
What is important to realize is that the ancient Egyptians say that about 25,000 years ago, the gods lived amongst them. Then they disappeared again. What the pyramid texts are saying is that we, the ancient Egyptians specifically, of course, are able to reach the gods again. For this we have to die, but once we're dead, we're able to join the gods once again. What we're talking about is some kind of other dimensional travel for the soul to undertake.
Buried in the desert sands for centuries, the ruins of Saqqara are home to another ancient mystery just 1/2 mile away from the pyramid of King Teti. In 1850, French archaeologist Auguste Mariette made an astonishing discovery. he unearthed a massive underground bunker.
This is the most strange and mysterious place. It feels like being in the bowels of the underworld. It's hard to describe. It's like being in another world, the world of the dead.
The Serapium contains enormous sarcophagi made from granite that was believed to have been transported from the city of Aswan, nearly 600 miles away.
This is just one of the many sarcophagus that are here. Dozens and dozens of them. And they weigh about 70 tons apiece. They're made from a solid block of granite. But the real mystery is how they cut them so sharply. Swiss watch precision, mirror smooth.
When you look at the inside of the boxes, you see the underside of the lid is perfectly square with the vertical surface of the inside of the box. Directly opposite, you have the same condition, which means that those two surfaces opposing each other must have been perfectly parallel. It's really amazing.